disruptive thinking is the willingness that you need to be able to disrupt the way that you look at life, because you understand that mindsets control assets. And I know when I say assets, I'm not just talking about wealth. I'm talking about relationships. I'm talking about wellness. I'm talking about your perspectives on life have to be disrupted in order to go to the next level. Some people are willing to do that, and some people are not. They just stay where it's safe and play in the safety zone. Other people color outside of the lines. And in the book, I talk about how to handle both groups of people, how to manage people who are disruptors, and how to support people that are disruptors.
What does desolation look like? Increasingly, it looks like America. We are seeing a loud splintering of the social arrangement that has sustained Americans for generations, the belief that hard work will bring you and yours the stability we all crave. Get a good enough job, go to work every day, watch over your kids, and America will smile down upon you. For far too many Americans, that's not happening anymore. Their country now is more likely to offer them a frown than a smile. Maybe even a grimace. Wealth inequality has become the social kindling of the 21st century, crackling underneath us, awaiting a spark to ignite either a destructive national conflagration or a beneficent societal transformation. Wade into the numbers chronicling the shift in American wealth over the past half-century, and you find yourself reading the transcript of the implosion of the American experiment, and perhaps the detonating fuse for a national explosion. As recently as 1965, the typical CEO of an American company made 20 times the salary of their average worker. By 2021, that number had soared to an average of 399 times more than the average worker, according to an Economic Policy Institute report. CEOs earned an average of $15.6 million in 2021.1. To make it worse, CEO salaries continue to climb. An analysis by Compensation Advisory Partners found they shot up by 19% in 2021.2. Wait a minute, wasn't that during the pandemic, when small businesses were closing and there was a national moratorium placed on evictions for masses of displaced workers? When there were closed restaurants and company layoffs, the workers who were able to have a job at all were flatlined. Worker salaries? They didn't even increase enough to keep up with inflation. That's painful enough on paper, but with these staggering gaps, rank and file workers can't help but wonder, am I working for my family or my boss's yacht? Am I staying late for me, or the stockholders and the top 5%? In 2020, the richest of the rich, the top 5% of the population, earned 23% of all U.S. income, according to census numbers. The top 20% earned 52.2% of all income. 3. The employers of those struggling at the bottom typically offer no health insurance, no sick days, no pension plans. Those workers can't take off if they get sick, and they can't afford medicine or to take their kid to the dentist. There are few things more unsettling, more enraging. Not surprisingly, the picture gets even uglier when you divide the population by race. A quarter of all black households have zero or negative net worth. Only 10% of white families are that poor, according to the Economic Policy Institute. Black families have just $5.04 in net worth for every $100 held by white families. 4. Between 1983 and 2013, white households saw their wealth increase by 14% while black households saw their wealth decline by 75%. 5. Staggering. Between 2005 and 2015, the home ownership rates for black households steadily declined. That is the very epitome of what it means to fall further behind. Generations of grueling work to pull up black households to a standard of living that might be described as minimally bearable have not borne fruit. Mobility is non-existent. Has all the toil been in vain? The astute work of Princeton economist Elora Derenoncourt revealed that there has been no progress in closing the wealth gap since 1950, and in fact since the 1980s the gap has been widening. Black households had more movement in the decades after enslavement. Point 6. Economists have fingered a major reason for this discrepancy: inherited wealth. White adults are more than twice as likely as black and Latino households to get significant financial help from parents and other elders, according to a 2022 poll by NPR, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and the Harvard Th. Chan School of Public Health. Point 7. You have black Americans who are doing everything they were told is right and not getting ahead, Dorothy Brown, a Georgetown tax law professor, told NPR. And they're scratching their heads wondering, how come I'm not doing better than I am? How come I'm not doing better than the guy in the cubicle next to me? 8. 38% of white adults reported to pollsters that they had gotten at least $10,000 in gifts or loans from a parent or older relative, while just 14% of black adults report the same. Those numbers are 16% for Latinos and 19% for Native Americans, according to the NPR poll. In fact, for black adults, Brown points out, generational wealth transfer is more likely to work in the reverse, children sending money to their parents, whose income over generations has steadily declined. However, the winds of despair in recent years have swept into communities that have seldom felt their chill. While the top 1% of wage earners in the U.S. saw their income increase by 229% between 1979 and 2019, skilled rural men have not seen their earnings change in 50 years. 9 reports show that rural children are more likely than urban children to be poor, and they are also more likely to live in areas with high rates of poverty, poor families in poor communities. These rural areas have lower rates of educational attainment than urban areas, higher shares of single mother-led families, and higher shares of work in service industries. These aren't just black and brown communities, though they are the pictures that make the news. Americans in general are suffering from a hemorrhaging middle-class economy. In other words, poverty and despair are being felt across America in a wide variety of communities, by Americans with a wide variety of skin tones. This pain has been showing up in recent years in the death rates of Americans. While the age-adjusted death rates in both rural and urban areas have been falling, the rates have risen among white rural residents between ages 25 and 64. 10 Researchers have been describing the trend as deaths of despair, increases in deaths from drug and alcohol abuse, suicide, chronic liver diseases, and cirrhosis. In fact, the difference in rural and urban death rates tripled over the past 20 years, mostly due to deaths among middle-aged white men and women, who now account for a third of all U.S. suicides. America is literally dying on the vines. If ever there was a time for disruption, this is it. Political scientists wondered how so many Americans could vote for both Barack Obama and Donald Trump, but economists knew the answer: they were searching for change. Disruption. White working-class Americans used to be the rock that the American economy was built on, accounting in 1975 for 70% of the adult population. However, 40 years later, that percentage had shrunk to 40%, the primacy of the white working-class man shriveling before our eyes. 11 Their anger, their hopelessness, is certainly understandable. Why do we need disruptive thinking now? Ask that white rural man who is staggered that his job prospects have disappeared, with no relief on the horizon. Ask that black mother trying to figure out how to feed her family as her wages buy less with each passing month. Ask the worker gazing out the office window watching her CEO slide into the helicopter to ferry him to his private jet as her health insurance coverage is slashed even further. Trust has been shredded. Anger is the new American pastime. If we are to be saved, we desperately need to summon the power of disruptive thinking. So, as we stand together on the precipice of the cliff, staring down into a valley teeming with unrelenting misery, we are all faced with the question for the ages: what are we going to do about it? What disruption are we willing to make in our lives to bring about change? For many of us, the misery index has been high for years. We have been immersed in despair for a long time, doing whatever we can to make it through another day and keep pushing forward, even when forward seems to offer nothing in the way of relief. But time spent in misery has no algebraic power over our ability to escape it. No matter how long it's been, we need to know that we don't have to stay there. I want to suggest to you that the new Dream Team for social justice comprises more than activists. It isn't merely going to be achieved through new presidents. The global village must unite with a resounding no. We must take our destiny from a one-pronged system of elected officials to galvanizing task forces that unite elected officials and CEOs focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion not just because of a moral mandate, but because it has proven to increase profitability. We must make room at the table for spiritual leaders who have been tossed to the trash heap of the narrative, because we seem not to realize that their influence is priceless and that potential wraparound services accessorize social upward mobility. They possess the unique commodity of trust in many circles. Admittedly, we are becoming increasingly tribal. These social subsets all have their pastors, even if all of them aren't preachers. The legendary leadership of Bishop Charles Blake and his successor presiding Bishop John Drew should preside over the largest Pentecostal reformation of predominantly black Pentecostals. We see the leadership of the current president of the National Baptist Convention of America, Dr. Samuel Tolbert, and the president of the Council of Bishops of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, Bishop Michael Leon Mitchell. Not to mention the tremendous congregational impact of forces like Charlemagne Tha God, Oprah Winfrey, and Susan Taylor. Although they are not pastors, they all have significant followings who listen to them closely. Many of them are contributors to transformative changes. Seth Godin, in his best-selling book Tribes, does a great job of reminding us that we all have spheres of influence. Not all of them are mammoth. Influence isn't always relegated to the affluent or famous. It will take all of us, from Sean Combs to Jay-Z and Beyoncé, from former President Barack Obama and his highly respected wife, Michelle Obama, right down to John Doe and Sally Somebody. All are collarless clergy. All of them care, most are helping, but alliances are necessary to win. Now is the time for us all to join hands on the issues we can agree on. We will need to join hands across party lines, socio-economic lines, racial lines, and gender divisions to agree on sustainable living. To unite around common causes on the critical issues is counterintuitive to the proclivity demonstrated among many today. People with PhDs must work shoulder to shoulder with people with JEDs to produce quantifiable impact and sustainable transformation, and to develop strategies that aren't merely limited to profit margins and election winners, uniting to form bridges of hope. It's not one of us but all of us, myself included, who must step up and contribute by being change agents. I will talk more about how we are building bridges that we hope create additional change in housing, employment, and educational programs, all aimed at closing the canyons between us without replacing any of us. Recently, the Dallas Regional Chamber appointed a task force to determine where our city ranked for diversity, equity, and inclusion (DEI). The results were shockingly dismal. In Dallas County, women earn 25% less than their male counterparts over a 5-year time span from 2015 to 2020, lower than a national average of 18% less. While a majority of the 398 companies surveyed have DEI as a core value, less than half of those surveyed have any accountability in place to promote the values expressed. The Dallas region is 17% black, yet only 5% of executives in the Dallas region were black. Hispanics make up 31% of the region, and just 9% of executives are Hispanic. Tax incentives at the local, state, and federal levels could help corporations to be further incentivized for DEI. Spiritual leaders who see their responsibility beyond sermonizing must break our silence and develop solutions to a global crisis that is eating at the underbelly of the American dream. As clergy, we have a generation who will not hear our message if it isn't validated by some meaningful effort to close the pay gaps and increase the underrepresentation of marginalized groups, and work alongside the many CEOs and elected officials who want to close the pay gaps, the opportunity gaps, the digital divide, and the inevitable erosion of families. Economics remains the leading cause of divorce in this country, not infidelity, as I would have thought. Maybe instead of TV shows about cheaters, we should add a show about robbers, robbers of hope. All of this creates opportunity. But only you, the recipient of said opportunities, can turn opportunities into reformative change. Your moment has arrived, that final straw shoving you to the disruptive thought that can turn this thing around. Your now is here. You deserve fairness. You've earned peace. You merit fulfillment. The elements you need for your transformation, the disruptive steps you need to take, are already inside of you. They are sitting there, waiting. The only thing that can come out of you is what's already in you. Everything that Moses became he was. He was leading sheep around the desert, then he ended up leading people. David was a shepherd boy turned king, fending off lions and bears, and then Goliath, and then the Philistines, but he was always a warrior, a tender warrior. Several years ago, my wife, Sarita, decided she wanted to go back to school at the tender age of 61. She was maybe a semester and a half from finishing her college degree when she left school decades ago. When she told me her plans, my reaction could be summarized in one word: why? We were exceedingly comfortable, had raised 5 successful children, and had seemingly everything we ever wanted. Why did she need that? But it was something she needed to prove to herself. She stayed up until 4 a.m. night after night doing homework. When she got her degree, we threw a big celebration party and had a good time. She took that step because she wanted to change. I'm not here to set a goal for other people's lives, I'm here to show you how to attain the goal you set for your own life. If you don't like the life you are living, you have the power to change it. It is inside of you. Fix it. Apologize. Say you're sorry. Do whatever it takes. If you don't like it, be complicit in the transformation you are praying for. Recently I found myself screaming at the TV screen as they were interviewing a guy who was saying he couldn't get out of his neighborhood, he was trapped. That's not true. I yelled. If it is poverty keeping you there, you can be poor anywhere. You don't have to be poor and step over needles and bullets and guns. You can be poor in Texas, Mississippi, Western Virginia, or Arkansas and live in a cabin in the woods. You can be poor by the beach. It's not about money, it's about choices. Sometimes upward mobility begins with a change of environment. If you don't like your life, stop waiting for somebody to come change it. Change it yourself. Change. In the documentary Waiting for Superman, renowned educator Jeffrey Canada, founder of the Harlem Children's Zone, recounts how devastated he was as a child when he discovered that Superman, his favorite superhero, was a made-up character and would not be coming to save him and his family from the desolation of the South Bronx. So, Canada dedicated his life to uplifting children living in such conditions. In the process disrupting the educational orthodoxy's belief that programs and schools couldn't significantly move the needle for poor urban kids. If you don't like your neighborhood, leave it. If you don't like your living room, paint it. I can't stress enough how strongly I feel about this. If you're miserable, change your life. In our homes, in our families, people tolerate years and years of abuse and damage. They don't want to make any waves, and they don't want to make any noise, and they don't want to upset or disappoint anybody. Well, I say, disappoint them. Disappoint all of them. Find your way through the fog. Because you can't help anybody while you're bleeding yourself. And let me be clear about something, this is not about money. As our society increasingly values the pursuit and accumulation of riches, it has become ever clearer to me that in many ways this is a fool's errand. I don't mean to say that money can't bring untold pleasures to our lives, but it doesn't relieve the basic pain, strife, and struggle that are synonymous with the human experience. You can accumulate all the riches in the world, but still not feel like you matter. That is really what we all are seeking, to prove to ourselves that we matter. That may come from the satisfaction we get taking care of an old lady or a needy child. It can come from a vast variety of sources, from many different actions. In many ways, I'm still taking care of my father, a half-century after he died. I do that by trying to take care of everybody around me, everybody in my purview. That's what drives me. How I tell myself I matter? I have a friend whose brother was murdered in Washington, D.C. Now my friend is raising his brother's son, and it's amazing to witness the person he has become. Because somebody needs him. He matters. On the surface it may seem as if the pursuit of disruption and transformation would look different to someone in a poor marginal community as compared to someone in an upper-class community. After all, the wealthy person already has everything they need, right? Well, that's the case only if you believe that economy and money are the substrata of transformation. I'm here to tell you that they're not. In early 2022, I spoke at a mega conference of high net worth individuals created by a billionaire entrepreneur. Attendees had to pay upward of $30,000 to get into the conference, and it was sold out. To listen online cost $1,000. In my neck of the woods, that's pretty high cotton. The speaker who went before me was a former president. My host had asked me to speak on the topic of one of my books, Don't Drop the MIC, about the power of communication. I started out talking about the importance of communication in business and in relationships, but I moved into a much more personal realm for the attendees. You came here to learn how to make a lot of money, but what good is the money if you don't have peace? I asked the crowd. There is no difference between being suicidal in a ghetto and being suicidal in a mansion. The abundance of things we possess is not what gives us tranquility. So, when we start comparing poor communities, middle-class communities, and upper-class communities and wondering whether the wealthy folks actually need disruption and transformation, I say that none of us is exempt from having something we want to transform in our lives. The things we need may be different, although often they are not. Everybody has some kind of poverty. Too many of us have been brainwashed to think if we have things, we don't have pain. That's not true at all. Sometimes you have more problems, more stress, more fear, more anxiety. Anorexia. Bulimia. Depression. Rich people have problems just like everybody else, they just live in a better house. When our society figures that out and stops being mad at them for being rich, we can connect on the bridge of human experience. Real wealth is affirmation, affection, humanity, and brotherhood. It's the look in your eye when you look at me and the look in my eye when I look at you. Those things transcend plans and barriers. Yes, poor people need to not be marginalized and to be transformed economically. But when they get there, to economic stability, they're going to find out that they still need to be transformed sociologically, psychologically, emotionally, or spiritually. And that can be just as hard and painful. None of us escapes this journey. Disruption is necessary for the woman who's been beat over the head with a skillet, for the man whose wife is searching through his phone. Disruption becomes necessary to be free of all terrorists, foreign or domestic. You can have domestic terrorism not only in your country, but in your house, on your job, in your life. And the fact that you make $1 million a month doesn't mean you're not terrorized. When I broke that down to the wealthy crowd of influencers at the mega conference, the whole place crumbled. I could see them collapse into tears. Because they knew that they were suffering, and they knew that I knew it. I don't have the money that they have, but I have enough money to know that money doesn't fix pain. We're all still human. You can't crawl into bed and cover yourself with your money to protect you. Money can't hold your hand. When they're lowering your mama into the grave. When the doctor comes into the room to tell you your baby's dead, being rich doesn't make you feel any better. But we have glamorized success and wealth to the point where people are walking around thinking that those who have success and wealth don't have any problems. We're all human, we can't escape our skin. We're all clay. This is about your tenure and fitting in and being accepted, and not saying anything to get you tossed overboard. You have many opportunities to disrupt your life to get the things you need, but your money isn't going to acquire them for you. Neither are fame and beauty. Some of the most confused people I've ever met were the most beautiful people, people so fine that I looked at them and wondered what it would be like to be that darn fine. Just wake up in the morning fine. Ain't brushed your teeth fine. Then I got to know them and found out they don't feel any different from the way I feel, and sometimes worse. I've had both men and women tell me that their looks are all that everyone sees. All of these experiences have let me know quite clearly that pain is not prejudiced, it attacks everybody. So why do we need disruption now? Because we're all infected with different kinds of trauma. Herein lies the brotherhood of humanity. No tribe in the world has escaped it. We are desperately in need of something to be solved, inside or outside. The fierce urgency of now may not be an alarm from the outside. It may be an alarm from the inside. It may be an alarm in your marriage. It may be an alarm in your behavior. It may be an alarm in your addiction, or your drinking, or your neuroses, or your gambling. It may be something that you're sick of. That's your urgency. It's not always about changing the world. It starts with changing your world. And then hopefully, one change at a time, we can change our world. But it doesn't happen until you get a grip on your world, because isn't that all that really matters to you at the end of the day? Before we grab the lofty notions of changing the political system and the housing system and the banking system, let's change the atmosphere in the house. Let's take more baths in soothing water and play soft music and light candles. Perhaps your peace comes from a meditative moment on the back porch and a transformative hour of listening to the crickets as the sun sets. Let's be peace-ridden with appreciation, so that when we do get ready to be innovative, we have something to spend. Because the bankruptcy of the soul is when more is going out than what's coming in. We have to be very intentional about keeping our emotional checkbook balanced. It's easy to write more checks than we get deposits. Disruptive thinking means we have to be purposeful about allowing people into our life that feed us, not just need us. We can't keep feeding if we can't keep eating, we're going to go bankrupt. Disruptive thinking shatters the norm of what we need. That's why it's so personal. My wife may not be what you need, your wife may not be what I need. You may need more space, I may need less. This is a tailored design. Success to me is when what I envisioned in my head appears in front of my eyes. The outer working of the internal, when the joy of my life starts with a concept in my head and I watch it incubate and develop in front of my eyes until it mirrors what I saw in my head. Whether it's a message or a movement or a business deal or a community build or getting one of my kids to be what I thought they could be. Disruptive thinking for each of us is personal, specific, individually transformative. Let's take that disruptive thought. Now.
Hey there, welcome back to our channel. Today we are diving into the power of disruptive thinking and why it's more important now than even before. In a world that constantly changing and evolving, disruptive thinking is essential for driving innovation and progress. It challenges the status quo, pushes boundaries and sparks new ideas that can revolutionize industries and change the way we live and work. With the current global challenges we are facing, such as climate change, social inequality, and technological advancement, disruptive thinking is critical for finding solutions and creating positive change. We need fresh perspectives and whole ideas to tackle these complex issues and create a better future for generations to come. Embracing disruptive thinking can also lead to personal growth and success. It encourages us to step out of our comfort zones, take risks, and pursue conversational paths that can lead to incredible opportunities and achievements. So let's embrace this disruptive thinking and unleash our creativity to make a real impact in the world. Together, we can challenge the norm, drive innovation, and create a brighter future for all. Thanks for watching, and remember to stay disruptive.